Thank you.
And also Nicolas Bonnenfant, co-founder of Coloco. And Carlos Bañon, I invite you back to be on the panel as well. So just by way of introduction, Kevin is first going to just talk a little bit about the work that he does, and you'll be able to see some of the images on the screen.
Thanks, Simon. Thank you for having me here, and thanks for the opening speech there. That was really inspiring. So my name is Kevin Haley. I am the founder of Kevin Haley Studio, a London-based studio. We specialize in placemaking projects, public realm, and designing community spaces. Our approach is playful, collaborative, and narrative-driven. The other hats I wear, I'm also a teacher. I teach at the Royal College of Art. I'm a part of a program there called Super Matter, and this is primarily a platform that prioritizes learning through making. We are working with the students to design new materials, ask questions, but ultimately really enjoy that process of not knowing where it might go if you engage with the matter in your hands. The final part I do is I'm a curator, and I regularly set up spaces for engagement. So within communities, setting up spaces, running them, and inviting a wider group of people to come into a space, not just architects and designers. Of course, they're all welcome, but wider people in that community to begin to talk about, I guess, issues that the community might face and how we might work together to begin to activate some of the spaces they care about, that they are frustrated with, that might not have changes. So these spaces become really important within the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So as before, if you do have any questions, please do raise your hand, and I'll bring the mic to you. But we're going to start with you, Kevin, asking the first sort of question. So just to kind of frame this, your practice specializes in storytelling, commercial interiors, and designing for the public realm, as we've seen. So what examples do you have that could be sort of relevant to, proposed reconstruction, or what's your experience of, reconstructing something that's been destroyed?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. I think I firstly would just, want to acknowledge that, any post-conflict environment is going to be incredibly challenging and complex to deal with. And, Hossein there kind of, in his description at the beginning, you can tell what those challenges will be. And I don't have any direct experience of necessarily working in that context, but what I can share is some lessons I have learnt with everyone here about directly working with people and involving them in the process of rebuilding or changing the way necessarily spaces that they inhabit can occur. And I also have a lot of experience in working with waste and the outcomes that you can discover in that process. And I guess I can share just a couple of insights with that. And the first one, in terms of working with people, is I think it's quite interesting listening to the first talk, and it was really super fascinating looking at AI and its ability to, I think there was a lot of conversation about almost using it in a way to kind of get through that frustration of finding ideas and accelerating the process. And the first thing I think I would share, almost to offer a counterbalance to that, is to actually slow the process down. And so there's a commitment needed in terms of working with people who aren't necessarily ever done design or architecture or understand the way we look at spaces, is to slow the process down and to embed yourself into their community, which is quite a commitment. So, for example, I think of a project a long time ago. It was in Liverpool in the UK, and I think I came along to this project with my rigid architectural processes that I was going to almost inflict upon them. We're going to do it like this. We're going to go through the process like this. And I remember I turned up into a space and I wanted to draw the city, but no one could draw the way they wanted to express themselves. And in that moment of this kind of collaborative workshop, the best thing happened was that one of the members of the workshop, I think he was 74, his name was John, and he said, I don't want to do this anymore. We're not going to get to where we need to. And I was kind of, at the time, a bit nervous about this kind of where this conversation is going. And I just said to John, what do you want to do? And John says, I want to take you around the city and show you where the problems are. I want to show you my community. And we ended up going on a pub crawl. And we went from one pub to another, one cafe space to another. John was playing the spoons in the pub, and we got to see on the ground this kind of, I call it like local intelligence, his kind of years of living in this space and showing me what mattered in this community. And what mattered was that all of these spaces he showed me were being removed from the city. They were being kind of taken away from funding due to lack of funding, or the buildings being left to kind of become derelict, etc. And so this was the best way to see it, not sitting in a studio drawing for it and him going through a process being frustrated, to walk. And so I learnt that very early on, if you want to work with communities, you have to be committed to essentially embedding yourself within their spaces, not necessarily asking them to come to you, to go to them, but to slow the process down and give it a lot of time. And what we ended up doing is actually we ended up building a lot of these forgotten spaces in the city back in the space that we were doing to bring everyone else aware to it. So it was a truly amazing process in the end. I could go on for a long time, Simon, but I will stop.
I know you could. I think it's important, though, what you were saying about speaking to people. And I think perhaps, you know, what Hossein touched upon in his introduction is about coming together, having discussions, talking. We're doing this here on a small scale, but obviously it can be done on a much bigger scale. It has to start with conversations and communication. And that brings me very nicely to you, Nicolas, in terms of scale, because, you know, you have worked on very large-scale projects, which have included the transformation of the former Yugoslavia. And I kind of wanted to kind of get an idea about what you think of the comments that have been made so far, but also how your approach may be used to sort of for this initiative to rebuild destroyed landscapes.
Well, I'm okay. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So
Well, I'm Nicolas, and I'm the founder of Coloco. We are working on different scale of landscape. At the same time, we're working on bioregions. Let's say about the world Paris and the world cities in the south of France, for example. But at the same time, we can work to a very, very small scale project with plans and with the reality, with our hands in the earth. And we are dealing with this reality of how plants can grow really, not just in photos or in projects. At the same time, we are well known here in Paris as architects and landscapers that are working with people, doing community gardens, doing, let's say, participative workshops, making dreams reality for the people. Lots of time, as we are doing really, really big scale projects, you know, at the end, the project finish on a desktop and no one do it. So when we have people that ask us to work on really, really big scale, we try to bring them to the city, to the land, to the gardens, and to try to make things with them. We say it's like prefiguration works to show that we are able to do together with all the actors that are making the city this reality, this dream a reality. So we have tools for that. For example, we have a tool that we call carte des biens communs in France. That could be a map of commons. And this map of commons, we have tools to work with people to make it in the city. So we are bringing all the actors outside to face the reality that is changing really, really fast everywhere in the world. You know, some people, some politicals sometimes say, well, my city is like this. And say, no, it's not like this enough. Come with us, you will see that have changed. And the practices, the emergent practices of all the sports, all the behavior in the common space are facing new realities and new behavior, let's say. So we bring them that, and we make those maps together, and we say this map have a time, a reality time to be improved and to be built about 2 or 3 years, and after 2 years we make it again because the reality have changed. And when you work with nature, we are really involved in what we can say rewilding the world. As landscaper, we know that if we let a land alone, the nature have responses to make it better. You know, the forces of reality of how plants and how ecosystem grows is that if the human go out of the system, it works better. So we try to find place everywhere in the world with, let's say, a place where we let an area where we let the new nature. We say nature, but it's not the good word. But the new lives eclosing. So we have to let place in the world, and I think it will be really important for Gaza that we have to refine soil, refine water, refine lands, and let people dream in those areas to make communes. Because the reality of a traumatic situation, we have done that in ex-Yugoslavia. There was a river that was the no-go zone between 2 communities. And during 10 years before we went there, no one went back to this river. And as we have been working with them, with the people, first with the children and after with all the people, cleaning the river, it was a waste river because it was belonging to any communities. We have been rebuilding that as a commune. And it was very important to rebuild the situation, let's say the conflictual situation on an element. And if his element have his own life, we used to say that's nature, that's a river, that's a forest, a garden, has his own life beside the human life, beside the administration or the construction or the capacity, all the things we put and we want to rebuild and to structure the things. So that can be an interesting way of working, refining the soil, refining the water, refining the seafronts, refining the sea waters of Gaza. They don't have access to their own sea waters. And that's a real problem because the land is too short for everyone. It's too small.
Yeah, I think it's particularly interesting what you're saying, Nicolas, in that although you're talking about large scale, it also comes down to human scale, it comes down to the individuals, it comes down to what Kevin said about communities. You kind of empower those communities, give them some sense of purpose and some focus, but also let nature take its path so that you can integrate what is going to naturally happen as well as what you want to happen, but make sure it is relevant to the people and not force it on them. Yeah, so that's a very interesting point because, you know, as you said, you've been working in such big scale, but actually to create and to achieve large scale, you have to break it down and make it small initially. So I'm going to come to you, Hossein, now because I wanted to sort of commend you on the incredible work that you've done in the past, you know, with relating to AIDS and to 9/11. And I really wanted to ask you sort of what lessons had been learnt in those that you can bring forward and apply to this project to reconstruct Gaza. Is there anything that you want to kind of say that actually this is the way we could approach it and this is how it might be successful?
I think one of the most important part of what I've done in past is allowing, for example, with the AIDS organization, we created an auction for photography auction, and the frustration of all these artists and the same in 9/11 fundraising, the frustration of all these artists that they couldn't help, they couldn't afford to finance something, they couldn't afford to help somehow. And these events allowed them to feel like they are somehow part of something bigger. And I think the same thing that we can do also with the reconstruction of Gaza, or at least imagining how Carlos would see the whole city rebuilt, just allowing us that frustration to form into something that is more or positive. And even if we never be able to use what we're doing, or we never be able to recreate what we want to, just the fact that we get to practice something that it's part of our occupations, part of our design, and in one small way feel like, okay, we have done something. So hopefully to our grandchildren we can say, when people were getting killed and the massacre was happening in Gaza, we did something. We were part of something positive. And I think that's really important. And one of the things I'd like to add is a lot of people saying like, why us, why international? We have invited several very, very prominent Palestinian architects and urban designers. So the group that we're putting together, the 25 architects and urban planners, are from all over the world, especially including people in Palestine, and without them, obviously, it wouldn't make any sense to do this. And it's also a great practice for all of us to be able to come together to design something from humanity and be outside of like the day jobs that we all have. And so I think the benefit would be immense for us as much as hopefully will be for the people of Gaza.
Yes, and also, as you say, the artists, when it was 9/11, they felt that they could do something and not just sort of be standing by and helpless. So I think, that's something that's really important, and because I feel that there's a lot of people that want to do something but not sure how they can approach it and what they can contribute. Coming to you, Carlos, you have, as I said, or only in private, you have strong opinions about artificial intelligence, or AI, and how that's affected architecture quite dramatically, and you've demonstrated that when you were doing your presentation, etc. And you were saying that it has been in the past quite linear, but now maybe we're using it to become more creative. And I just wanted to sort of ask you, how AI could help cities reconstruct after deconstruction.
I mean, that's a super difficult question to answer, because I think in this case I will lean first to kind of the more pragmatic approach of using AI, because it's a large scale project like with the reconstruction is not looking at just small details first. You need to make decisions, you need to turn them into actionables. So I think AI can help really work with the data, with the satellite images, with the pictures that can be taken, and to assess the condition and the situation probably in an informed way. So probably is related maybe to, on one hand, to address the resources that are available. So try to work with the resources that are available there, try to maximize them. Also to assess the condition maybe of the architecture as it is. Maybe with AI models can be somehow evaluated at a large scale at the beginning to get to know what is the current status. So I think AI can help at the large scale on that sense, with visual recognition, patterns, and combined with models that can actually evaluate those constructions. But also, I think going to the human scale. I think also, I don't know, I see it from a bit far, but I still think that probably people that suffer such a terrible, situation, I think they need to get at some point some hope, and probably AI can help build certain idea, certain image of how this could be in the coming years. So AI can help at least set the horizon or of where the community want to be, right? It's like images that can can motivate people. In the end, I think the power there is like people really, with the energy, with the spirits to be able to go ahead. I think AI can help on that sense. Could be a certain, new beginning or new opportunity that is created with people. And the beginning, they can help start shaping that idea. And then the images, I really believe that images are very powerful in many ways. Could be, an image can bias or can determine certain things. So I think maybe creating that vision for what would be the city itself, but also for what would be the reconstructed buildings. You can start imagining, okay, when I keep most of what we can keep, and from there we keep, the existing structures also as a, as a memory, as something that we can actually live with in a different way. We're going to look at these, structures in a completely different manner, and then we can think of ideas of building with what we have instead of like fully replacing. I think on that sense, I think AI can play a good role in inspiring people and empower people with making those visions of what could be the city in the coming years.
And I think that word hope is something that we all kind of all cling on to because it's a positive word. It can mean so many things in so many different places. I know that you have spoken, Nicolas, already about some of the projects that you've been involved in, so you sort of answered the question I was going to ask you, but I wanted to just know a little bit more, because you were talking about landscaping, you were talking about how you got people to kind of do those sort of small scale things that then ended up in a bigger scale project. So do you want to just elaborate a little bit more about how AI has helped in that sort of situation?
I think at the same time that we have a race with AI, that's what I've heard, we have the same race, or perhaps a race more existential with climate change. Let's say, if we want the Earth to be livable in few times, we have to face this race at the same time. And for example, in Gaza, they will have to face at the same time reconstruction, but climate change race. In reality, there is no water in Gaza, so they depend on Israeli water. They depend on lots on the feed. All the food is coming from this area. So the first race there will be to first have green infrastructure to make life able in this area, and at the same time we will have to let place to all the people living there. So we'll have a space problem in this area if we want to have to share this land with all the new the real problems that they will have to face. So I totally agree that images will help people to face the horrible reality that is existing now. Perhaps to go further than to go on another scale than the scale they have, and perhaps to pass the border. The reality of the problem in Gaza is the border. It's a prison. So perhaps the images that we can share are images without border, without this border that don't allow people to have a real territory. And for example, I was saying that they are not allowed to go in the water. So it's not just the seashore; it's the territorial water that they have to use for the livability of the city. So perhaps I think the images have to be geographical more than just reusing what we still have there, and each day we still have less, so we'll have even more problems.
And maybe some of those borders, as you say, are actually very, very small. They're very short. They're very local. They're not necessarily an international border we're talking about, but something that people can relate to, like a garden or a space, a plot that they have themselves.
For example, what you call a green zone, that are buffer zone between the territories. You know, we have that in Cyprus. You have that. It's really easy for a landscape architect to say, okay, it's a green zone, let's say a buffer zone with plants and things like that. But in reality, with Gaza, it will be 10 kilometers less of territories. So, okay, it can be a really good landscape, very beautiful landscape. It can be a really important for the global strategy. It will be a green infrastructure for everyone. But at the same time, it will be less territory for Palestinians. So, I'm asking, how can we, but I think it's a geographical problems more than an architectural problems. And I know that ONU, NATO, ONU in France is NO, it's reversed, you know, the United Nations. They have been trying to measure how will it cost just to break down all the drilling that are not that can stay, and it's a huge. It's even more than reconstructing. So we will have problem of waste there. So that can be really important for architecture.
Yes, and in fact, that's a good segue to what I want to ask Carlos is about, you know, how you see design being responsible, you know, in the future. You know, are we heading in the right direction, or do we need help? Do you want to kind of tell us what your opinion is on that?
Well, I mean, I think help is always like welcome on that sense. I think maybe with, you know, in this kind of situations, AI can help manage the amount of like information, probably giving us like, you know, somehow a good vision for us to make decisions more informed. I think it's very important to make decisions well informed, and sometimes the data comes from different sources. And the particularity of working with AI models is that it can gather, can put together many kind of different layers of data coming from images, from even like from, you know, even tweets on the phone, from different kind of like layers of climate, from physical pictures, and that can help us have a better view, you know, to make right decisions as designers. So at the large scale, for sure, I think can be helpful. But of course, I would say I would use that, you know, that technology in a way that is, you know, is used in a very aseptic way. Like, you know, try to remove the bias as much as possible and try to look at the data itself and try to use that, you know, particularity. And then, I don't know, at the design level, I think, I mean, as you know, designers or architects, if we are, you know, trying to help rebuild, I think we always need to try to be, I mean, to make decisions that are relevant to the context. So it's for sure, in terms of like the construction system, we need to look at the efficiency of resources. So I think that's a must. I mean, the resources are limited, and also the reality of construction there. You need to be sensitive to what is possible to be done there. And I think AI in that sense, I mentioned before, like, you know, working with images, but I think also can help, you know, understanding the current state of the buildings or the areas we are looking at, and propose certain ways of optimized solutions for that current condition. So it's not like, say, a final design, but it could be a guideline for you know, I try to understand what would be an efficient way, a resourceful way to help with the design of the area. I think maybe there's not much space for aesthetics then. I mean, it's like more of like a very functional, very resource efficient. But still, I think as designer, we always try to make you know, designs to be appealing and eventually to try to integrate the community and the cultural roots as well in a way, even if it's rebuilding with low resources, but still we need to try to convey that there. I think in that sense AI could help, yeah.
And it's like Eliana was saying earlier, that you need to have some sort of, information and data, and that the more information we have, the better we can respond with that. Yes. I've got an additional question for you, Hossein, actually. You may not be able to answer this, but it's not in the schedule, but I wanted to kind of say it's fantastic that you're gathering all these amazing minds and architects and specialists and designers, but I wanted to ask, is there a sort of time scale in terms of those people gathering, or is it dependent on what pans out in the situation?
Well, I'm hoping that we'll be able to have our first meeting. It was hopefully physical, but maybe in Zoom in next few months. And I also wanted to let you know that the fact that once we put this proposal together, once we all agree on a design. Through my connections in EU and I was art envoy in American, and so I have a lot of connections in politics, and so I'm hoping to take this proposal to them, to my friends in Qatar, and be able to fund something like this, or at least get some political interest in this city that we create, hopefully. But most of it, again, depends on when this conflict settles down and is safe for anyone to even survey the damages. One of the things that Nicolas said was about the structure. The structures are half destroyed, and I always go back to Carlos's beautiful images of building beautiful. Structures from the ruins or from the leftover of the destructed building, and that always gives me. I've been following you for many years, and it always gives me hope that actually from that destruction can be something beautiful. So there's, as they say, there's a beauty in every disaster, and you implemented it really well. But hopefully it was much sooner than as soon as the conflict is finished.
That sounds promising. We all certainly hope for that, as that word again. And just coming to you, Kevin, you've talked about how your practice is working on several projects that embrace community, and we've talked about collaboration. I just wanted to ask you, how do empowered communities operate when they start from zero?
Yeah, and I think that's a really great question. And I think some of the more successful projects we've been involved with, I think one of the key ingredients for that empowerment is when you're able to give a community a fluid space, a base to operate from. So a space which brings everyone together, that holds them, a space that they actually think is theirs. It's not just an invitation to use it for a moment, so they can make a mark on it, they can actually use it, because it takes time for people to really get involved in projects if you're doing these community-facing aspects. Sometimes the quietest people in the room have the best ideas, but they are often forefront in coming forward. So I think one of the projects that comes to mind as an example of this is actually working in America. And there was this community, a set of designers had invited me over to collaborate with them. And there was some real no-go zone areas in this community. There were lots of problems with public spaces that had been left to run down, places you wouldn't want to go. The local governments were struggling with funding to do this. The local community were getting frustrated. And so what this group of designers had done, they'd set up, I think it's really important, a space for the community, but right in a prominent area. It was actually next to a supermarket where everyone was going. And it was actually just a social space at first. It was a place to get a coffee. It was a place to have a drink at night. And they were using this to just listen, and invited me over, and we actually went on a bike tour around the city, and then we just spent some time in this space. And what came out of that was some really interesting questions. And one of the ones I always remember was someone said, I don't know what anyone does where I live. They just didn't know what anyone does. And so that kind of inspired this project where we essentially, there was other layers to it, but we looked at historically this town was very famous for a tradition of hawking, where structures were built and products were sold down the road through a sort of celebratory kind of event. And it brought everyone out to kind of engage with each other. So we built this hawking structure. And we went round and local businesses kind of donated things. And we went into these kind of public spaces. And we simply said, tell us what you do, and you can have something off the cart. And then we built a signpost that basically just wrote up what you thought your kind of core skill set is, whether you thought you made the most amazing apple pie, or whether you thought you were very good at carpentry. And eventually, over this like 2-3 week period, we actually were building a visible public skills directory of the local community. And what it ended up doing, we put that into a book. We then took that back to the local governments and said, look, there are all these skills. You don't have the funding, but there's willingness from the people to change the space themselves. So the community then started coming together to basically take over these public spaces. And it was quite an empowering thing to do, but I think it was totally possible because they had that space in the beginning over time to get to know one another, to start to break down some of these kind of issues, and then a group of people willing to listen and help them activate it. So if there was one thing, I think having a space is very important.
And are there any other things that you have as initiatives that are like that, using waste or anything that brings people together?
I mean, from the waste example, I mean, we're working on a project right now. You know about it, Simon, you're involved.
Nobody else knows about it here, though.
But there's a sort of actually it's a growing problem in sort of London that at the moment we've got 50 pubs closing down every month. And pubs, yes, we know them as spaces to drink and get your Sunday roast, but actually what they're so important for are important social anchors in communities. They actually bring quite a wide segment of communities together, but they are slowly going because economic problems that came out of COVID, a new generation that don't necessarily want to have the same drinking habits. Actually, historically, the pub used to be the public house, and the public house was where you had your post office, where you had your public workspace, your library, your snooker hall. It had an intensification of use to it. And over the years, it had been eradicated down to like sort of 2 uses. And so we've got a space over in London. It's a kind of community space. It's a space that encourages people that you can be messy. You don't have to worry about. It's not a precious space. And there's lots of developments going on in London, and we've got all the waste coming from the developments in London, tons of it coming into this space. And we are going to build a pub from this waste that gives people an opportunity to actually explore what we can do with waste and all the problems that come from it, because having all this waste turn up and categorizing, understanding what we can do there is a project in its own right. But the second thing, the most important thing is, whatever this pub becomes, it becomes a platform for discussion, because then you open up the doors and you ask the question, what is the future of our social spaces? And you then, we link it up with other community organizations so that everyone can explore this, but there's a space to do it in, and it happens to be made from waste, which is also an exciting thing just to be involved in.
And it is basically something that's been destructed because, you're putting things together that might have just been thrown away. So it does kind of relate to what we're talking about.
Yeah, we've got waste coming out of basements that have not been touched in 20 years, from skips, from all over London coming through.
But I think it's also important because you're identifying that people have skills and not everyone is aware of it. We have communities that have been pulled apart, certainly in the Middle East and other areas like that. But actually, there may be people who are neighbours and they could benefit from getting together. And I think that's something that is really quite key. Again, it's about collaboration. I know we are short of time, but I want to open up the questions to the audience. I'm not sure if anyone has got any particular questions they want to ask the panel. Yeah, over here. I will come with the mic.
My question is sort of an idea, and it's not fully baked yet, so bear with me. It's coming from another genocidal country, Canada, with the Aboriginals. 2 years ago, they discovered mass graves in churches, and the government spent millions trying to have technology that 3D scans the earth and sonar and try to figure out where these graves are, because they exist and the people that are actually responsible for those are still alive, but they still choose technology to find the graves instead of prosecuting people. This on the side. How hopeful are you that architecture, instead of being connected to I mean, Nazi Germany and like having those chambers, it's always seems to me that architecture is tied to trauma. How hopeful are you that once the future arrives and this genocide is over, that the architecture could actually be a healing thing?
Thank you for that question.
Well, I think, I mean, we architects have certain, like, you know, qualities and vision that probably can help, maybe going back to what I said before, to somehow inspire people. And I think, and to see the world in a different way. So probably when we're talking about, you know, the destruction way, probably we're looking at a potential like way to see that, you know, destruction turn into another opportunity. We are, I mean, optimistic, like, you know, by default, I guess. I mean, we are like trained like that, and we try to make the world better. So even we are under, you know, certain like circumstances, we will look at that as an opportunity to make it better again. So I guess that maybe, you know, trying to get, in the end, design is something that can unite people and can inspire people. And I believe that power, you know, in combination with the current technologies that we have, can be instrumental to help rebuild. Then other layers will follow, like technology that probably can help rebuild stronger, faster, with less resources, with local materials, maybe addressing, like, you know, elements that can be brought from different places so we can reuse. I think all these technologies, different parts can be put together so we can support the vision, right? But I think it's very important that we keep like carrying the flag of like that shaping what is gonna be next, you know, for a place, for a city, and try to bring some optimism, especially after devastations.
Thank you, Carlos.
And if I might add, to also with the examples that I have seen in Warsaw and Berlin, how the reconstruction has brought a huge new life into the areas that was so devastating.
And I think it's important, your question of saying healing, I think that's a really key word to kind of think about in how we can use architecture, AI, technology to kind of overcome issues that we're facing. Are there any other questions from the audience at all? Because I have one question for the panel. I want to invite Eliana and Will back to the panel, please. If you can just come back. And it's just a very straightforward, simple question, but it might be a good summary for everything. You might have to share the seat. Be cozy up. So just going through the panel, really, I wanted to just get your views about design and transformation. Really, if you wanted to sum up in 3 simple words, we'll start with you, Hossein, on your start at that end.
I think the 3 words that I was thinking was communication, adaptation, and collaboration. I think those were the 3 important words to me.
Okay, thank you. Carlos.
3 words is difficult, but I'm gonna be in the radical side. I would say creating new rules.
Okay, right. Thank you. And Kevin?
I have to echo collaboration and add empowerment and connection.
And Nicolas?
Okay, yes. Let's say planting with people, you resolve lots of problems.
Okay, that's more than 3 words, but we'll go with it. Do you want to pass?
Take off lots of words.
You stole all of mine. I want to say curiosity, adaptability, and collaboration, but I'll say human value and critical thinking.
Thank you, Eliana. And Will?
Yeah, I think amplification, heritage, I think is very important, and collaboration to echo, the previous ones.
Thank you so much. So that concludes our discussion and panel talks. Please join me in saying a big thank you to Eliana Nigro, Hossein Farmani, Nicolas Bonnenfant, Carlos Bañon, and Kevin Haley. Thank you to everyone at DNA Paris Design Awards for putting all this together, especially to Hossein Farmani and to Romain over there in the background, but doing all the work, and his team as well. Thank you very much. Thank you to you, the audience, for coming as well. And it wouldn't be anything without you, for your attention and your questions. It's been really valuable and really insightful. And we've really enjoyed listening to everything that's been discussed. And for those of you that will be going to the ceremony, we look forward to seeing you later on this evening. But the rest of you certainly have a lovely day in Paris. Thank you very much.